when you're planning for retirement, there is one giant, kinda scary question, right? How do you make your money last? Today, we are going to dig into a really popular rule of thumb that promises an easy answer, but we're also going to see what 100 years of data tells us about when that promise can go really, really wrong.
You know, the biggest challenge in retirement is turning that pile of savings you've built up into a steady paycheck that you can't outlive. It's a super complex problem, but for decades, people have been looking for a simple fix. You know, that one single number they can just trust.
Okay, let's make this real. Imagine this is you. You've worked your tail off. You've saved $1 million. So, now what? Can you spend $30,000 a year? $50,000? How about 70? If you pick the wrong number, well, the consequences are severe. This is the question that keeps people up at night.
And that brings us to this key idea, the Safe Withdrawal Rate, or SWR for short. It's supposed to be the magic percentage that lets you sleep easy, knowing your money's going to last as long as you do. The whole goal is to find the highest SWR that is still, safe.
So what does history actually tell us? Well, if you look at the data going all the way back to 1920, it's incredibly reassuring, at least at first. A 3% or a 4% withdrawal rate has literally never failed over a 30-year period. A perfect 100% success rate. I mean, that feels like a guarantee, doesn't it?
Now, here's where it gets really interesting. What happens when we push that number to 5%? Historically, even a 5% rate has worked 90% of the time. Think about that for a second. 9 times out of 10, you would have been totally fine. Those sounds like pretty good odds, right? So what's the catch?
Well, the catch is that 10% failure rate. Because when we're talking about your entire life savings, a 1 in 10 chance of running out of money isn't just a statistic, it's a potential disaster. We've got to understand what exactly goes wrong in that 10% of cases.
So let's ask the most important question here. Is it just random bad luck? You know, a stock market crash here, a little inflation there, or is there a specific, identifiable pattern to why these retirement plans fail?
And the answer, when you look at the data, is surprisingly clear. These failures, they aren't random at all. They're caused by one specific thing: starting your retirement at the absolute worst possible time. This chart just illustrates the point perfectly. It maps out every single possible 30-year retirement simulation since 1920. Each green line is a success story. Each red line, well, that's a failure. But notice something? The red isn't just sprinkled around randomly. It's all clumped together in these few distinct, dangerous periods. This is our first major clue.
Okay, so let's put on our detective hats and dig into this. If these failures are all clustered together, they have to share a common cause. So what is this hidden danger that connects these specific moments in history?
Okay, on the left, you're seeing historical investment returns. That light blue line is the one to watch. It shows your return after inflation. Now look at the chart on the right with our red failure zones. See how right before each red cluster kicks off, that light blue line on the left just goes totally flat for years? That's it. That's the connection.
And this brings us to the real villain of our story: a long period of near zero real returns. It really doesn't matter if your portfolio goes up 7% on paper if inflation is also 7%. Your purchasing power, your ability to actually go out and buy stuff, has gone absolutely nowhere. This is the danger hiding just below the surface.
And here they are, the specific start years for retirements that failed with that 5% withdrawal rate. Every single one of these, 1937, the late 60s, 1973, and the year 2000, was like a starting pistol for a long, grinding period where your investments just could not outrun inflation. It was the definition of bad timing.
So, we found the culprit. Now let's look at the anatomy of these failures. Because it's one thing to see them on a historical chart, but what does this slow grind of low real returns actually do to a retiree's bank account year after year? This famous line from Ernest Hemingway just perfectly captures the terrifying nature of these retirement failures. It isn't one single dramatic market crash that does all the damage. It's a slow, silent erosion that builds for decades before the floor just completely falls out from under you. First, let's look at the 90% of cases that actually worked out. In these scenarios, that starting $1 million portfolio either stays pretty level or, in a lot of cases, it actually grows over the 30 years. This is what success looks like, and it's the most common outcome, which is good news.
But now look at the failures. These are the 10% that ran out of money. For the first 15, maybe even 20 years, the decline is slow. It doesn't look like a 5-alarm fire. But then, the portfolio hits a tipping point and just collapses. Gradually, and then,
all at once.
And here's the most crucial point. In every single one of these historical failures, the money didn't run out until deep into retirement. We're talking 23, 26, even 29 years in. The real danger is that you'd feel safe for 2 whole decades thinking your plan was working, with absolutely no idea you are on a collision course with disaster.
Okay, that was the bad news. I know, but understanding the risk is the very first step to managing it. Now that we've unmasked the culprit, let's talk about a simple, actionable strategy you can use to protect your own retirement.
Here is your 3-step survival guide. First, just be more conservative. Start with a rate that has a better track record, something like 4%. Second, monitor what actually matters, those real returns. If you see your investments are struggling to beat inflation for a few years in a row, that is your big warning sign. And third, be flexible. Having a plan to temporarily cut back on spending could be the one thing that saves your entire retirement.
And hey, if you need any more convincing on being conservative, just look what happens if you get a little more aggressive and try a 6% withdrawal rate. The success rate just plummets from 90% all the way down to 67%. A third of all retirements would have failed, and failure happens way faster, as early as 16 years in. That tiny 1% difference has a massive impact on your risk.
And visually, the danger is even more stark. Remember that chart with the red failure clusters for the 5% rate? This is the same chart, but for a 6% rate. Just look at all that extra red. The clusters of failure get so much bigger, and they trap even more retirement start years. It is a powerful picture of how quickly your margin of safety can disappear.
So, the ultimate takeaway here is this. Retirement planning cannot be a set-it-and-forget-it strategy. The whole idea of one magic number is a myth. The real key to success is staying aware of the economic conditions, especially those real returns, and being flexible enough to adapt your plan when you have to.
You know, we've spent all this time focused on that scary 10% of cases that ended in failure. But that begs one final, really fascinating question. If bad timing can lead to ruin, what does good timing lead to? What happened to the portfolios that started in the very best years in history?